Hello everyone. Today we're going to study about biodiversity and its conservation. Biodiversity. Biodiversity is the variety of life. Biodiversity is the combination of two words, bio and diversity. Bio means life and diversity means variety. There are various variety of life on the earth that is called biodiversity. The term biological diversity was first used by wildlife scientist and conservationist Raymond Abdasman in 1968, where he advocated the conservation. It was widely adopted only in 1980s. Biodiversity is defined as the variety and variability among all groups of living organisms in the ecosystem in which they live. There are variety of ecosystem present in Earth, forest ecosystem, grassland ecosystem, marine ecosystem. There are various type of ecosystem present in biodiversity. Look at this picture. This picture shows the variety of life on Earth. Significance of biodiversity. Biodiversity is very important for fresh water, air. It protect the land, improve the productivity of land, improve the water quality, cleaning the water, and provide the fresh air for the animals. It is also important for forestry, fisheries, development of variety of fish, forestry, culture of plants, established forest. Forest is also useful for rain, provide the oxygen, and it is also useful decrease the global warming. Agriculture, the variety of crops developed by wild variety of plants. Loss of biodiversity has serious economic and social cost for any country. It is very important for the human life. Humans are dependent on plants, microorganisms, earth animal for their food, shelter, medicine, industrial products. Now we look the type of biodiversity. There are main three type of the biodiversity or three different level of biodiversity: genetic level, species level, and ecosystem level or ecosystem diversity. In genetic level, genes are the basic unit of heredity, information transmitted from one generation to another generation. Within individual species, there are number of varieties to the individuals genes. Differentiation of the genes, different combination of the genes lead the new variety of plants and animal both. There are number of varieties which are slightly different from one to another. Their difference are due to the different combination of genes. Example, all rice varieties belong the species Oryza sativa, but there are thousands of wild and cultivated varieties of the rice, which show variation at the genetic level and are different in the physiological, in their colors, size, shape, nutrients content of the plant. Species biodiversity, a discrete group of organisms of the same kind is known as the species diversity. Species diversity is the diversity between the different species. The sum of varieties of all living organisms at the species level is known as the species variety. Yeah, species diversities. Example, there are more than 20 million organisms on the earth which have been identified for their given name. In plants, there are different varieties, different species of the plants. In a fruit plants, banana, apple, grapes, mango, vegetable plants, brinjal, spinach. We see the variety of species in a animal also. Cow, goat, humans, lion, tiger, fox. There are various variety of the species. These are the shown species diversity. Ecosystem diversity, it is set of biotic components. Biotic components just like animals, microorganisms, and plants. Biotic component interact with another abiotic components like soil, water, air. These are the abiotic components. Both are interacting with each other and form the ecological diversity or ecosystem diversity. A large region with different ecosystem can be considered of the ecosystem diversity. There are different ecosystems on earth: forest ecosystem, grassland ecosystem, marine ecosystem, freshwater ecosystem. There are various type of the ecosystem on the earth. Example, forest ecosystem is supposed to have mainly dominance of trees, but there are many type of the forest ecosystem: tropical rainforest ecosystem, tropical deciduous forest ecosystem, temperature forest ecosystem. Variation observed are numerous due to the variation in the physical factor. The ecosystem also show the variation with respect to physical parameters like moisture, temperature, altitude. These all are make the diversity in ecosystem. Value of biodiversity. Biodiversity is very valuable for us or all animal being live on the earth. The value of biodiversity provide a variety of environments, services, just like a food, shelter, medicine. These are essential service of biodiversity. Ecosystems that are essential at the global, regional, and local, maintaining the water cycle, protecting soil, are some important services. Biodiversity is also essential for the preserving ecological cycle, such as the fixing and recycling of nutrients by the ecological cycle or biochemical cycle, nitrogen cycle, oxygen cycle, carbon dioxide cycle, phosphorus cycle, sulfur cycle, soil formation, maintaining the water balance within ecosystem, This is the essential service of biodiversity for human and others' life. Food, cloth, housing, energy, medicine, all are resources that are directly indirectly linked to ecological or biological variety present in the biosphere. In agriculture community, biodiversity is used to grow their crops to suit the environment. We define the value of biodiversity. There are two types of the biodiversity: direct values and indirect values. Indirect values, there are conjunctive and productive value are the direct value of biodiversity. Indirect values, social, ethical, aesthetics, environmental, are the indirect value of biodiversity. Environmental value, the environmental value of biodiversity can be found by examining each ecosystem process and identifying the ecosystem services that result for intense in wetland. The vegetation capture water carried sediment, the soil organisms break down a range of nutrients and pollutants washed into the area. Social value. The social value of biodiversity include the aesthetics, recreational, cultural, and spiritual values. To this can be added health benefits resulting from the recreational and other activities. Ecosystem services. Ecosystem services also support the human needs, just like a food, shelter, medicine, entertainment, and activities which such as intensely managed production ecosystem. Economic value. Biodiversity provide the economic wealth of any country. Biodiversity provide the different industry raw material, and these are grown to world economy. The economic potential of biodiversity is immense to term of the food, fooder, medicinal, ethical, and social values. Biodiversity is the major resource of industrials raw material. Conjunctive use of the value. This is related to natural products that are used directly for the food, fooder, timber, fuel. The tribal people are completely depend on the forest. They make their uh, shelter, home by the timber. They use the timber for fuel, food. They are depend on the food, medicine. Human are totally depend on the biodiversity for their food, shelter, and fuels. Many people around the world still depend on the wild species for most their needs like food, clothing. Humans are used at least 40,000 species of plant and animals on their daily basis. Humans every requirement fulfilled by the biodiversity. Productive use of value. This is assigned to products that are commercial, harvested, and marketed. Uh, Almost all the present day agriculture's fruits are originated from the wild varieties of the plant. The biotechnologist, scientists continuously use the wild species of the plant for the developing new and better disease resistance varieties. Mendel is also used wild pea for their practicals, experiments, and give the law of inheritance, law of dominance, law of segregation. Biodiversity represent the original stock from which new varieties being developed. Ethical and moral value. It is based on the principle live and let other live. Ethical value related to the biodiversity conservation are based on the importance to protecting all form of the life, both plant and animals, and microorganisms also. All forms of the life have to right to exist on the earth. Man is the only small part of the great earth biodiversity family. But human activities are destruct the other family members, wildlife and biodiversities. Aesthetics value. The beauty of our planet is because of biodiversity, which otherwise would have resembled other barren planets dotted around the universe. In biodiversity, various types of flowers, plants, birds make the earth beautiful. Different bright colors of flowers, different colors of birds that make the biodiversity beautiful. Biologically, diversity adds the quality of life to provide some of the most beautiful aspects of our existence. Biodiversity is the responsible for beauty of landscape. This beauty make our mind happy. India, as a mega diversity nation, India has a rich and varied heritage of the biodiversity. India has rich biological diversity of flora and fauna, representing about 6% of the global biodiversity. India ranked 10th among the plant-rich countries of the world, 11th in the term of number endemic species of high vertebrates, and 6th among the center of diversity of origin agriculture crops. Biodiversity at the regional level better understood by the categorized species richness. India is the one of the 12th mega diversity country in the world. India government record 47,000 species of plants and 81 species of animals, which is about 7% and 6.5% respectively of global flora and fauna. India is the origin center of the origin of many crops and wildlife species and flowering plant. There are 166 species of crop plant and 320 species of the wild species and nearly 5,000 species of flowering plants had their origin in India. India have a variety and various large marine biodiversity. Along 75-kilometer long coastline of our country in mangrove, estuaries, coral reef, backwater, there exists to rich biodiversity. India have a rich marine biodiversity. The marine diversity is rich in molluscan, crustaceans, crabs, polycrustaceans, coral, several species of mangrove and seagrasses are also found in our country. India forest cover 64.01 million hectares, having a rich biodiversity of plants in the Trans-Himalayan, Northwest, Central, and Eastern Himalaya, forest coast, desert, Gangetic plains, and Nicobar and Lakshadweep Islands. Hotspot of biodiversity, area which exhibit high species richness as well as high species endemism are termed as the hotspot of biodiversity. Characteristics of the hotspot of biodiversity, they are global importance and are the host of priceless gift of nature. They are very rich in biodiversity, genetic biodiversity, species biodiversity, and ecosystem biodiversity, or combination of all type of the biodiversity. Being the habitat of endemic and endangered species, they are having a high level of endemic and are under threat of habitual destruction that again leads the extinction of the species. There are 25 such hotspots of biodiversity on the global level. Out of two are present in India, Eastern Himalaya and Western Ghat. Endangered species of India. The International Union for Conservation of Natural and Natural Resources (IUCN) published the Red Data Book, which include the list of endangered species of plant and animal. The Red Data Book implies the warning signal those species which are endangered and if not be protected and are likely become the extinct in near future. In India, there are 450 plant species have been identified in this category. 150 mammals and 150 species of birds are estimated to be threatened, while an unknown number of species of insects are endangered. Some dangerous species are given below: reptiles in gharial, sea green turtle, tortoise, python, birds, great Indian bustard, peacock, pelican, great Indian hornbill, Siberian white crane in carnivorous, Indian wolf, red fox, sloth bear, red panda, mammals, leopard, striped hyena, Indian lion, golden cat, desert cat are in danger zone. Primates, hook gibbon, lion-tailed macaque, Nilgiri langur, capped monkey, golden monkey are in danger zone. In plants, a large number of species of orchids, rhododendrons, medicinal plants like serpentina, sandalwoods, trees, santalum, cycas are the in dangerous zone. If you want to save, we aware the save our environment. Loss of biodiversity. Today, the threats to species ecosystem are greatest recorded in recent history, and virtually all them are caused by human mismanagement of biological resources, often stimulated by the misguided economy, policies, and faulty institutions. Biodiversity is disturbed by the human activities. Human are destruct the habitat of animals, over harvesting, over exploitation of biological resources, human population affect the loss of biodiversity, introduction of the new species, climate change, just like a global warming, acid rain, population, pollution, institutional policy failure. These are the main cause of loss of our biodiversity. Conservation of biodiversity. To conserve the biodiversity, biodiversity conservation is the protection, preservation, management of restoration of wildlife and natural resources such as forest, water bodies, etc. Survival of many species and habitat which are threatened due to the human activities can be ensured through the conservation of biodiversity. There is an urgent need not only to manage and conserve the biotic wealth but also to restore the degraded ecosystem. Conservation refers to management of human activities in the environment so that it does not lead a habitual destruction and loss of biodiversity. We need the conservation of biodiversity to preserve and protect species of their habitat, to maintain essential ecological process, so that there is no ecological imbalance created, to use the species ecosystem sustainably without exploiting them, to creation of national park, sanctuaries, biosphere reserve, preserve the flora and fauna, conservation of genetic biodiversity by establishing zoo, botanical garden, nurseries, proper planning of land used to other natural resources affecting the biodiversity, by prohibiting hunting, poaching of animals, fishing beyond the productive capacity of ecosystem, by regulation through act, law, legislative controls such as India Forest Act. Humans have been directly or indirectly dependent on the biodiversity for their needs. To consider extent, however, increasing the population pressure and developmental activities have led to large scale depletion to the natural resources. Biodiversity conservation means the management of human activities. There are two types of the conservation: in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. In situ conservation means conservation of biodiversity or wildlife in their natural habitat. Form of the in situ conservation, national park, sanctuary, biosphere. Ex situ conservation, to protect the wildlife or biodiversity away from their natural habitat. Seed bank, cryopreservation, botanical garden, zoological garden, aquaria, arboreta are the form of ex situ conservation. In situ conservation, national park, it is an area abdicated from the conservation of wildlife along with its environment. It is also meant for enjoyment through the tourism, but without impairing the environment. Each national park usually aims to conserve specifically of some particular species of the wildlife with others. Overgrazing of domestic animals or private right to forestry activities prohibited with the national park. Wildlife sanctuaries. There are also protected area where killing, hunting, poaching, sharing of capturing of wildlife is prohibited, excepting under the control of highest authority. Biosphere reserves. It is a special category of protected area where human population are also form the part of system. They are large protected area, usually more than 5,000 square kilometer. A biosphere reserve has a three parts: core zone, buffer zone, and transition zone. Core zone is the innermost area. This is totally prohibited by general people. Buffer zone, it is lie between the core and transition zone. There some research work, educational activities are permitted. Transition zone, this is the outermost zone of the biosphere reserve. Here cropping, forestry, recreation, fisheries, and other activities are allowed. Ex situ conservation forms seed bank, gene bank, and cryopreservation. Seed gene bank. There are cold storage where seed are kept under the control of the temperature and humidity for storage of this. This storage is the easiest way to protect the germ plasm. Storage the germ plasm of plant in a low temperature. Seeds preserved under controlled condition in minus temperature. Gene bank. Gene bank is also a cold storage where germ plasm of animals are stored under the control of temperature and humidity and preserving the genetic resources. Cryopreservation. It is the newest application of the technology of for preservation of the biotic parts. This type of the conservation is done at the very low temperature, 196 degrees Celsius, in liquid nitrogen. The metabolic activities of organisms are suspended under the low temperature. These methods are used for the research purpose, long-term captive breeding. When the animals lost their natural habitat permanently or certain highly unfavorable condition of their habitat. By this method, we involve capture, maintenance, and captive breeding of long-term basis of individuals of endangered species. Botanical garden. A botanical garden is place where plants, flowering plants, fruits plants, and vegetable plants are grown. The botanical garden provide the beauty and calm environment. Most of the botanical garden have started keeping exotic plants for the educational and research purpose. Zoological gardens. In zoo, wild animals are maintained in captivity and conservation of wildlife animals. Zoological garden have a rare and endangered species, protect the rare and endangered species of life. Now we look at the act of biodiversity of conservation. Now first we look the Endangered Species Act ESA by the United States, enacted in 1973. Purpose of this act to protect and recover the implied species of ecosystem upon which they depend. Key provision of this act listing species as endangered and threatened, designating critical habitat for listed species, developing and implement recovery plan, prohibiting the taking, harming, poaching, killing of listed species. Now next, Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act EPBC Australia. This act was enacted in 1999. Purpose of this act to provide the framework for the protection of environment including biodiversity and heritage place. Key provisions: assessment and approval of action that may significantly impact national protected matter, protection of world heritage properties, national heritage place, wetland of international importance, and threatened species of ecological communities, establishment of biodiversity conservation program and plan for it. Now next act, Wildlife Protection Act by India. This act is enacted in 1972. Purpose of this act to protect the country's wild animals, birds, and plants with view to ensuring the ecological and environmental security of India. Key provisions of this act: creation and protected areas such as a national park, wildlife sanctuaries, prohibition of hunting, poaching, and killing of specified animals, regulation of trade and commerce in wild animals, animals, articles, and trophies, establishment of the National Board for Wildlife and the Central Zoo Authority. Now next, National Environment and Rural Communities Act by the United Kingdom. This is enacted by in 2006. Purpose of this act to make provision about the natural environment, including biodiversity conservation and enhancement. Key provisions: duty of public authorities to have regard to purpose of the conserving biodiversity, establishment of natural inland, a bodies responsible for the conserving and enhancing inland natural environment, power to designate sites of special scientific interest and other protected area. Biodiversity Conservation Act 2002. The Biodiversity Conservation Act 2002 is an important legislative framework aimed to preserving the biological diversity. It was established to address the decline in biodiversity, to promote the sustainable use of biological resources, the Act include the several key components. First, conservation of biodiversity. This act first aim to conservation of biodiversity at local level, regional level, state level, national level, and world level. Sustainable use. It promotes the sustainable use of biodiversity to conserve the biodiversity. Equitable sharing. Next, biodiversity management committee. It promotes the how to manage the biodiversity loss. National Biodiversity Authority. National Biological Authority is promote the conservation of biodiversity, establish the sanctuaries, biosphere, national parks, state biodiversity boards. Every state form the state biodiversity board to protect the state biodiversity, protect their wildlife, protect their forest. People's biodiversity register. This promote the documentation of biodiversity and analysis of the biodiversity, research and training. In this point, biodiversity aid promote the research on biodiversity conservation, give the training of local people to save the biodiversity, sustainable use of biodiversity, protection of traditional knowledge. By this, promote the traditional knowledge of local people and protection the local biodiversity. Regulation of biopiracy. These are the key component of Biodiversity Conservation Act 2002. Today needs is we save our biodiversity by the sustainable development. This is referred to development that meet the need of current generation without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their needs. It simply refers to intra and intergenerational equity. Balance between the environment, development, and society result to sustainable development, which ensure the biodiversity conservation. Sustainable development is the only way on this time we protect our biodiversity by the sustainable use of biodiversity. This is the only possible in presence of good enforced and implemented policies, convention, environmental institutions. We must protect our biodiversity through the sustainable development. Thank you. Save our biodiversity, save life.